Welcome to Resistance Live. Since 2017, Resistance Live has been the go-to home for political and legal news and analysis through a decidedly progressive activist lens. I'm your host, Elizabeth Cronise McLaughlin. I'm a former Wall Street and human rights lawyer, a lifelong organizer, and a leadership and impact consultant for all those seeking to lead big progressive change in these incredibly challenging times. To get bonus broadcasts, ask questions, and more, don't forget to become a paid subscriber to the show at patreon.com/resistancelive. And to learn more about what we do to help progressive leaders everywhere, check out GaiaLeadershipProject.com. And now, here's today's show. Well, welcome to Resistance Live for the 9th of September, 2025. If you happen to hear some construction noise in the background, I deeply apologize for that, but I have a little work being done in my place today. Doing my best to make sure that our mic is clear on all of this. We have a crazy set of developments since last night, as I'm sure you are all aware. Yesterday, the House Oversight Committee received a response to a subpoena that they issued to the Epstein estate. And as a result, they got access to, among other things, the Epstein birthday book, the infamous birthday book, which contains the note that Donald Trump wrote to Jeffrey Epstein that he claimed didn't exist. And it's horrifying. And there's a lot more in the book that's horrifying. So we have to talk about all of that. And in addition to that, we have a whole ton of other stuff to talk about, like the Supreme Court decision yesterday that essentially legalized ethnic cleansing in the United States. Oh, joy. I'm being sarcastic. I'm not pleased about that at all. We will definitely have something to say about that. So today for our visually challenged viewers, I'm wearing a white shirt with a black blazer over top. My hair is pulled back. I'm a pink-skinned, green-eyed, dirty blonde-haired woman. And I'm coming to you, as always, from occupied Muncie, Lenape, and Mohican land. Okay, so late last night, the birthday book was released. Now, I want everybody to be really clear about this because there were some questions on the Patreon feed this morning concerning the fact that, for instance, there was no handwriting expert attached to this. Why? Because folks like Charlie Kirk came out immediately and claimed that Donald Trump's obvious signature, which is definitely his signature, which even his niece, Mary Trump, has confirmed is his signature, was somehow not his signature on that note. I will just tell you that House Oversight did, and particularly Dems on House Oversight, released those documents as soon as they received them, okay? And I don't really think anybody could have anticipated that anybody was going to contest Donald Trump's signature, but regardless, I tend to share the opinion of other commentators out there that there was really no reason to sink to their level on this. Like, it's stupid. We should be mocking them for claiming it's somehow not his signature. We already know they were best friends. There's dozens of photographs of the two of them together. Why this would be fabricated, let alone by the Epstein estate, is ridiculous. You know, the idea that it would have happened is ridiculous. So everyone has to keep in mind that this is not something that was like, you know, created by Democrats or even came from the DOJ. This came from the Epstein estate itself, which has no reason to fabricate anything. The guy is dead, right? Like, they don't have any reason to claim that Donald Trump signed something that he didn't sign. On top of everything else, when you look at what's actually contained in that letter, let alone the sketch on it, a lot more becomes clear. Because if you have seen the image, which is, of course, on our thumbnail for today's broadcast, you know that essentially what Donald Trump drew there is a prepubescent teenage body. That in and of itself is wildly disturbing. One of the things that I have found kind of questionable is why very few men have pointed this out. A few have, but you know, it's very obvious that it is not meant to be the body of an adult woman. That in and of itself is kind of horrifying. And then late yesterday, in addition to that, other things in the birthday book were released. They include comments from big donors to MIT about Epstein picking up Maxwell's teenage daughter. And that, of course, was Ghislaine Maxwell, who is the daughter of a very famous British man. They refer to him picking up teenage girls everywhere that he went. There are sketches of him, obscene sketches of him receiving massages from 4 teenage girls at a time and more. I'm not really going to go into the details of that on the broadcast, but it's horrifying, just absolutely horrifying. And taken in that context, you know, there can be no doubt that everyone who was in Epstein's inner circle knew exactly what he was doing. In fact, the number of references just in what we've seen to Epstein and underage girls is shocking. And it's very clear from the men who are represented there that they all knew exactly what was happening, if not participated in it, and found it all to be something of a joke. I personally have found a lot of this very hard to take from the standpoint, as I think all of us probably have, from the standpoint of how disposable these girls seem to be to the men in this book. And that's on top of the fact that there seemed to be no concern about them ever being held liable in any way for the very obvious grooming and molestation of these girls, right? I mean, there's so many layers of it that are truly horrifying. So a few things have come out in the context of this, in addition to the birthday book, that folks should be aware of. Jasmine Crockett gave an interview last night on MSNBC that truly was kind of revelatory, because one of the things that she revealed as a member of the House Oversight Committee is that there's also indications in the documents that have been released of this funnel through which girls were brought into the United States to be a part of Epstein's trafficking ring. And one of the things that she alluded to was modeling agencies. And she was very careful how she worded this, which I think is obviously intentional. You know, Jasmine Crockett is very plain spoken, of course, but also an incredible communicator. And I can only imagine that she chose her words very carefully here, because the allusion that she's making to modeling agencies means what anybody paying attention would think it means. Okay, so more on that in a second. One of the things that she alluded to is that modeling agencies funneled girls from overseas into this sex trafficking operation. And she didn't reveal names, and she essentially said, that's all I'm going to say about that for now. But I have to remind you all that Trump had a modeling agency. And it seems pretty clear to me from the way in which Jasmine Crockett discussed this, that is one of perhaps several modeling agencies, because I'm going to remind you all, one of Jeffrey Epstein's other best friends ran a modeling agency, and that man has since, well, he's dead now, but was arrested for raping teenagers and young women who were brought in through that modeling agency operation. So there's a number of angles for this, but there's no reason for Jasmine Crockett to have spoken about this in the way that she did if she wasn't actually alluding to Trump's potential involvement through his modeling agency. And the thing that makes this even more significant, which I really hope a lot of people start talking about very soon, is that puts Trump not just in the realm of having participated in child molestation and rape, but actually in the realm of sex trafficking itself, including internationally. And that adds another layer of deeply disturbing potential allegations here against the president of the United States. So I also have to point out that in addition to the birthday book, there were other things that we became aware of last night, like a photograph of Trump and Epstein and another very high-profile man who, by the way, is affiliated with RFK Jr. also. And there's photographs of RFK Jr. and Epstein also. But this particular photograph involved Jeffrey Epstein giving Donald Trump, or Trump giving Epstein, I can't remember which way it went, a fake check in the amount of $22,500 for a, quote, depreciated asset, wherein the name of the girl involved was blacked out. That, by the way, appears to be an inside joke about selling a raped young woman or girl from one of them to the other. So the layers of this get more and more disgusting and more depraved. And I have to tell you all, as I said last night and again this morning on Blue Sky, that we know that the FBI seized something like 11,000 photographs and videos. It's more than that, but photographs and videos that have been classified as illicit child sexual material from Jeffrey Epstein's residences. And this feels to me very much like just the tip of the iceberg. So as a result, because the Republicans obviously know what we know, right? I don't want to, none of them are stupid, right? The issue now is like, how are they going to continue perpetrating the cover up? Because they know this is something that if it continues to escalate in the way that it has, could potentially bring down the entire administration. They're trying crazy stuff, right? Like Carolyn Levitt was out last night claiming there's no way Donald Trump ever would have done this, and this is totally a fabricated signature. I mean, come on. They're not saying, no, he didn't participate in trafficking. No, he didn't participate in child rape. They're saying that's not his signature. That in and of itself is deeply troubling, right? They're not denying that he actually was best friends with the United States' most notorious sex trafficker of the 20th and 21st century. They're not denying that. They're not denying that the two of them were together on a routine basis, right? They're not even denying that the thing that broke them apart as in terms of a friendship is that, as Trump put it, Jeffrey Epstein stole a girl from him out of Mar-a-Lago, okay? They're not denying any of this. They're just denying that somehow his signature, which is quite obviously his signature, signed in a Sharpie that mirrors the signature on letters, dozens of letters to George Conway and Hillary Clinton and other people, it's exactly the same signature. They're simply denying that the signature isn't his. That in and of itself is shocking, because what it says is that they know that he's involved, and that's all they've got. I have to tell you, I think this is going to get a lot worse. And I've been saying this from the moment where they refused to release the Epstein files all the way back in July, that there are things in those files that are going to be so beyond the pale when it comes to Donald Trump that they may be inescapable for him finally. Karma has a long tail. So we are going to have to see what happens next with this, but I do want to point out that this is just the beginning. And again, these are files that were obtained from Epstein's own estate. This does not even include the tens of thousands of documents and evidence that the DOJ has. And I'm going to remind everybody as well that it is virtually impossible to destroy evidence in this era, given how it is stored electronically. I've done several broadcasts on this in the past. So let's not assume that anything has been destroyed. It's very difficult to do that. Again, the full totality of the Epstein files need to be released. And I'm just going to say one other thing. One of the other things that is in this book is a collage of photographs of Jeffrey Epstein with young girls. There's got to be on the 2 pages, at least that I've seen, at least 100 potential victims. We know from reporting that the actual estimate is more than 1,000 children. So we have a long way to go and a long trajectory toward justice being served, and we absolutely have to keep pushing back. So that's that. And I will remind you all that in addition to that, we are awaiting the Epstein victims who have been brave enough to come forward, releasing their own list of folks that they know were directly involved in the sex trafficking operations, which they are compiling. And, again, we will have to see what comes of that. So there's an awful lot to go on this. And honestly, it's all quite disgusting. And I have to warn everybody, for survivors like myself, it's going to get a hell of a lot worse. I know it, right? Like, I can feel in my bones. They have videotape, they have photographs. There's a lot worse to come. So prepare yourselves, in other words. Okay, we have to talk about the ruling out of the Supreme Court yesterday. Yesterday, the Supreme Court, once again using the shadow docket, permitted ICE to restart ethnic cleansing operations in Los Angeles on the basis of accent, appearance, and profession. Essentially what the Supreme Court did yesterday, and I'm not going to put any gloss on this, is rule that ethnic cleansing in America by ICE is legal. What this means now is that, unlike the lower court rulings, which stopped ICE from engaging in racial profiling in their persecution of Hispanic Americans and Hispanic immigrants here, that ICE can now resume targeting people purely based on the color of their skin, the jobs they have, and whether or not they have a Latinx, Latino accent. That is disgusting. I will also point out this is in a long line of persecution of people of color in this country. However, this is the first time that the U.S. military has been adjudicated to legally be allowed to violate the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution to persecute people on the basis of race. There's no sugarcoating this. Ellie Mistal did a piece yesterday in The Nation, which you should all go read about this. But I have to say that it's horrifying. And Sonia Sotomayor wrote a dissent, as the three liberal justices have been writing now for months, that essentially said, this is the eradication of our rights. This is the Supreme Court, the majority, giving full clearance for the Trump administration to persecute people in violation of the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution. And it's, on the slippery slope to the total end of our democracy. I cannot make that any better than what I just said. I'm sorry. I know a lot of you come here to hear me talk you off the ledge. Unfortunately, I can't do that today. This ruling is abominable. Now, someone on the Patreon feed did ask if there was a way for this case to get back up to the Supreme Court. So look, if the Supreme Court was reformed, which is not going to happen unless and until we take back the House, the Senate, and the presidency, obviously a case that involved the persecution of people on the basis of their race or ethnicity by the federal government could create an opportunity for a liberal majority of the Supreme Court to overrule that decision. Okay. But until that happens, there's no way for that to take place. And this is one reason, those of you who've been here for a very long time know that I have been calling for reform of the Supreme Court all the way back to the moment where Biden took office. Because if we had expanded the Supreme Court to 13 to mirror the 13 federal circuits, we would not have this problem. And the Biden administration had an opportunity to do that and paneled a commission to investigate it. The commission kind of went, meh. And so they didn't do anything about it. And here we are. We need Supreme Court reform immediately. And I'm just going to say the other thing we need here is that we need ICE abolished, just completely abolished, not reformed, abolished. We need a complete reimagination of what immigration looks like in this country. Because where we sit right now on all of this is that literally, just like slave patrols existed in the 1800s to pick up Black people and return them to enslavement or put them into enslavement, this situation mirrors that by allowing the federal government essentially to round up anyone with brown skin and detain them and put them in a concentration camp. That is essentially what this Supreme Court has now endorsed. And there's no way around it until we have Supreme Court reform and the abolishment of ICE. Full stop. Okay. On the good news front, yesterday, I have a dog at my feet, by the way, today, you guys. I know sometimes you guys want to say hello to Sophie, and she happens to be here today, but she's sleeping underneath me. So my apologies if I'm bumping around on the camera a little bit. We did have some good news yesterday in the form of polling, which is that an NBC News poll found that Trump is 30 points down from where we were in November in 18 to 29-year-olds and 34 points down with the Hispanic voting population in the United States. I have to remind you all that notwithstanding the terrorizing of this administration of all of us in one form or another, this is actually a very weak president. There is not a huge amount of support for him in the country right now. And I know that people come on here and they say all the time, oh, like, how can 50% of the population vote for him? 50% of the population did not. 90 million Americans of voting age did not vote. At this moment, he has a very small and honestly, continuously dwindling base of people who do not want their neighbors rounded up, who believe in gay marriage, who are opposed to what he's doing with tariffs, and who fundamentally are, even if they voted for him in many instances, wildly disappointed with what the administration has done. So from the standpoint of how we approach this as activists and organizers and people who want to create change, I just have to remind everybody that they are exceedingly weak. One of the reasons why they're engaging in this attempt to terrorize all of us and to terrorize people on the basis of identity in particular is because if they don't do that and they don't scare people into isolation and scare people into silence, they will lose. Like, they know that. The whole point of this is for them to cling to their white supremacist power with their fingernails, using every tactic available to them, given the power that has been granted to them. So it's really important for us to remember this, because I know it can feel overwhelming. They are not in the majority by a long shot at this point. They are not in a position where people approve of what they're doing. And there are way more of us in this country who care about our fellow human beings than those who don't. So very critical at this point to, again, maintain your hope. Hope is a practice. Hope is a discipline. Mariam Kaba teaches this, and it's critical. Maintain your hope and keep doing the work. Okay, we have to talk about another ramping up here just very briefly. So yesterday, the Trump administration announced that they are ramping up ICE operations in Chicago. No shock there because that's been signaled for weeks. And also in Boston, where they have challenged the sanctuary city status and Mayor Wu in particular in ways that are, again, abominable. Chicago is very well organized and prepared for this. This morning on my Blue Sky account, you can go over and check it out there at ecmclaughlin.com. There are hotlines to call to get involved. There are really key efforts being made by Chicago organizers to protect the people of Chicago, and similar efforts are also underway in Boston. So if you live in one of those two places, please make sure that you are getting directly involved, because apart from anything else, people showing up and protesting and showing up in rapid response to defend their neighbors has been shown in places like DC already to push ICE out of those neighborhoods. So please get involved with people who know what they're doing. Get involved with organizations that are working to protect your neighbors, and make sure that you're stepping up to be a part of the solution here. Okay. We had a little bit of a kind of like scandalous reporting over the weekend about some infighting inside the Trump administration. Because, everybody cares very much about like whether or not they're in the favor of the king. This always has this flavor to me whenever this kind of thing happens. So apparently Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent threatened to punch Bill Pulte in the face in the middle of a dinner that was housed by something called the Executive Club, which is a new organization that was set up for conservative members of the political glitterati, for lack of a better way of putting it. And was like, I'm going to take you outside and punch you in the face because you said things about me to the president behind my back. Lots of cursing, lots of F-bombs dropped. And then eventually the two men had to be separated and stuck at opposite ends of the table for this 30-person dinner. So, one of the things that I just have to point out here, in addition to the fact that we all already know it's a cult, is that the people on the inside, just like everyone else who is complicit, is afraid of falling out of favor with the cult leader, because they know that if they fall out of favor with the cult leader, all bets are off and threats of violence can follow and all that other sort of stuff. It's ugly, I suppose, in a weird sort of way. There's a kind of let them fight sort of sensibility that goes along with it. But I also want people to understand that it's not like anything inside this administration is stable, okay? So that's the other thing here. We have an unstable leader, malignant narcissist with dementia and ailing health running the country. We have hardcore white supremacist eugenicists like Stephen Miller and Russ Vought and RFK Jr. running agencies or as special advisors to the president, none of whom are stable. And then we've got his entire cabinet fighting amongst themselves to see who can praise him and kiss his ass enough to stay in the good graces of the king for now. None of it is going to lead to a positive outcome. And again, I have to tell you that, the foundations of this administration are not strong. Like, how many jobs does Marco Rubio have right now? Sean Duffy is in charge of NASA and the Department of Transportation. They can't find enough people to staff ICE to carry out their aims right now. Over and over and over again, we've seen evidence of this. So keep remembering this too, okay? No one knows how the dominoes are going to fall on this. No one knows what direct action, what form of protesting, what form of community organizing is eventually going to topple this regime. But they're not standing on solid ground, and they are despised by 80% of America right now. So we don't know how this is all going to play out, but I will just tell you all that the indications right now are not that there is anything other than panic, fear, and instability at the top of the chain. And that in and of itself presents opportunities. So it's a moment to continue getting involved, making change, showing up, protesting, organizing in your own community. Make sure that you have community organizing and caretaking at the center of what you are doing. I put out an educational video on this yesterday on our Ripple Effect Institute channel, which has gone viral. So you can check that out. It's at Ripple Effect Institute on YouTube. And that also talks about the critical importance of community organizing in toppling authoritarian regimes. All right. So People are in motion everywhere, as Mariam Kaba says almost daily at this point. And there's a lot of reason for hope. There's also a lot of reason to get involved. Do not wait until the next election. Do not wait until the midterms. Stay focused on what's happening in your own local area. Stay particularly focused on local elections. Like here in New Jersey, we have a gubernatorial race. Virginia has a gubernatorial race. That election is coming up the first week in November. So there's so much work to be done. And the more that we can stabilize, by the way, local and state governments, the more of a defense we have against the regime, whether that's about COVID vaccines or invasions by ICE or court battles over like whether or not the government can do certain things. Democratic attorneys general, Democratic governors are one of the biggest and most important backstops to what's happening. So you have to get involved. You must, okay? Like it's not optional right now. And I have to say to everybody, getting involved is not posting on social media. Getting involved is doing actual action and power building where you live in the form of community organizing. All right. That is it for today. I'm going to remind everybody that we have a 20% discount code running over on Patreon right now between now and Friday. Use the code podcast. You can either upgrade to an annual subscription using that 20% off code, or if you're new to us and you want to ask me questions and have me answer them on the air, or you want to join our weekly bonus broadcast, you can also head on over to patreon.com/resistancelive, plug in that code and get 20% off an annual subscription between now and the 12th, which is Friday. All right. We are, by the way, back up now also on podcasting channels as of yesterday. So I want to welcome all of our new and old listeners on our podcasting channels particularly. We are so grateful to be out in audio format for those of you who want to listen in your car or while you're walking your dog or while you're just simply cleaning your house. So grateful to have all of that back and up, and please support this channel and the work that we do here and get the word out. Share it, thumbs up, like us on a podcasting platform if that's where you're listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and I will see you all back here tomorrow at regular time. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. See you soon. That's our show for today, folks. Thanks so much for being here at Resistance Live. To get more out of the show, including bonus broadcasts, the answers to all your most pressing political and legal questions, and way more, head on over to patreon.com/resistancelive and become a paid subscriber. And don't forget to hit subscribe here on your favorite podcasting platform to make sure that you never miss an episode. See you next time.